So, ladies, are you there?
Oh, yes, sir. We are here.
That is probably the most direct. I mean, because we were supposed to have a live session directly from Aurora today, and we do have a live session from Aurora, right?
Just not the session we planned. Yes.
No, and you have to tell me and the audience a little bit why we are not able to do what we planned, dear Pat.
I am delighted to. So, thank you, Morten and Jean. We were so thrilled at the opportunity to once again do a Print Sample TV live, and we had it all set up and we had it tested, and then weather hit. And all of a sudden, all of these amazing print samples that we were waiting on from folks in Europe, from folks in the US, just didn't show up. And so I have like a very few of them that got to me late last week, but pretty much everything that was in transit from like the middle of last week on has been stuck in some hub somewhere. Some of them are still in Europe. Some of them are stuck at the FedEx hub in Memphis. There are a couple of things.
I saw some in Cincinnati.
Stuck in Cincinnati, the DHL hub in Cincinnati. So like, because we're in the business, we know where all the hubs are, right? And so as I started getting the messages, I'm going, oh, that's not going to get here.
It's trouble.
So sadly, we did not get it all. And so we do have a plan. These were such great samples that we knew were coming, and the few that have gotten here are worthy of being treated really well. So what we want to do is come back to you at a later date with a true Print Sample TV live that looks at all of these great solutions. And I mean, it's a combination of things. It's applications, it's technology, it's print quality, it's substrate differences. It's all these things we love to see in a print sample. So we're going to look at them in depth and touch them and feel them and get some really good images from them. And we'll revert back to you guys when we're ready to do that. But for today, Morten, we thought that to be respectful to all the folks who had signed up and who were interested in print samples, that we'd spend a little bit of time talking about what is a print sample anyway, and how do you make one that people care about.
But that is great, and that is, perfect for me to talk about, because that, when we started Print Sample TV, we need to add a little history to it, right, Pat? Because we have gone back some time, and now I understand from Jean that you and her know each other for a way longer time than you and I do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We have worked together. Yes, we have.
Yeah. So, and I know that both of you are very passionate about inkjet, of course. And of course, the print samples in this particular episode was focused on inkjet, because we are in a paradigm shift now where people can actually replace some of the analog equipment, maybe moving into some digital space, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, from your perspective, Pat, you have looked through so many print samples that I can't even count it. What kind of criteria do you judge these upon?
So you have to be careful, because it's unfair to judge every inkjet print sample against every other inkjet print sample, right? They're all built for reasons. And so you wouldn't want to compare a transaction piece to something that was intended to be a coffee table book. You wouldn't want to compare sort of letter mail, direct mail, to something that has, higher optical quality, higher design quality. So you want to be comparing like for like, but at the baseline, you're looking to make sure that the print is what you expect it to be. Please don't put things out into the wild that have jet outs and banding in the solids and things that are out of registration. I have actually seen that. If you're going to create a print, you want that print that comes off the press to be the best it can be. And if you are going to then turn around and not only create it for production, but you're going to use it at a trade event, or you're going to bundle it up in an envelope and send it off to an analyst and say,
Oh,
isn't this really cool?
Have fun.
Let's make sure that what you put in the envelope actually represents your press, because when I put my analyst hat on, I'm going to look at it critically. And it's not even, I don't even have to get a loop out for most of the things that I look at. And I still get things from vendors that I probably shouldn't have gotten.
But,
and then don't put it on a show floor,
No,
don't
but,
hand it to a potential customer and say, hi, isn't this fabulous, when it really isn't fabulous.
But Pat, I can't help think about, because if you, I mean, I understand your criteria and I like these, of course, you know that. But I can't help think about if they deliver something to you that is super optimized, maybe that gives a wrong impression of what comes out of the press.
So I think the answer is kind of. So if you're going to send something to me, Morten, I need it to be the best it can possibly be, because I need to know what the press is capable of, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't think of a press on the market today that is not pretty capable, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, whether you're looking at a Kodak Prosper, you're looking at an HPT series, you're looking at a Ricoh VC, you're looking at a screen, no matter who you're, the new Kyocera Task Alpha, the Xerox family of inkjet presses, all of them are really pretty capable presses and capable of doing amazing things, but they have differences. Right? They all use slightly different rips. They take different paper.
So sometimes it's more about the differences as well.
It is. And so I want the best it can be, because I want to know what it can achieve. But then what I always say to vendors is, show me something a customer printed. Show me what customers have going out the door. And that's where you start to learn, is this press harder to live with than perhaps another press? Because if you get consistent print from a customer that doesn't show the best it can be, right?
Oh yeah.
Then you start to think in terms of, well, what is it about this customer and this press that aren't getting along with each other? Because we know the press can do better. Why is it not doing better in this situation? And that's a conversation I have with hardware vendors quite frequently. And I have it with printing companies quite frequently as well, because they'll go, it's like, we don't understand. Why doesn't ours look like, what we saw at the trade show? Why doesn't it look like what we saw in the customer center? Jean?
Doesn't it, obviously when it comes to the ink, and the price of ink is more expensive than oil, isn't that the big thing though? Because now you can do all these settings on the press and you can lower quality for lower jobs, and everyone's trying to save a quick buck, and you know what? The end user's not going to notice.
And you can do that. And so there is a material difference between taking ink out. Very often we take black out, right? We take black out to the point where it just kind of meets our quality requirements. And we save a lot of money that way. And there's a lot of reason to do that. I mean, let's face it, your loyalty statement from your grocery store, does not need to be at the same quality as something that's trying to get you to buy maybe new healthcare insurance or a new TV set. But there's a difference between adjusting the amount of ink and real quality problems. So when I talk about challenges that some of the PSPs have shown me, they're having problems with, maybe they don't understand the maintenance routines. So you're starting to see jet outs in production work where you just shouldn't see them.
Yeah.
Or banding. And banding, it can come from a lot of different places, but it usually has to do with the way the file was prepped. And if they don't do it correctly, no matter how much ink they try to save, they're still not putting their best foot forward. So there's there's a lot of levers that sort of go into the print sample and the print quality story. And it is absolutely possible to minimize ink usage, but still produce a really great print piece that does not have jet outs, does not have banding, and is appropriately profiled for the paper. And that's the other big mistake.
I can tell you, Pat, that it's kind of funny because when I suggested to Jean as part of this webinar to do print samples, our first idea was basically to deliver a unified PDF for all the presses to be printed and compared with. And Jean was kind of, nah, that's a no-go. Nobody will do it because they will just, see this one compared to this one. And this, and it makes perfect sense what you're saying, because as Jean also said, the biggest issue we would have in that case was that if we ask people to print on the lowest quality, on the highest quality, it could be pretty easy to cheat on that one, right?
And everybody does. So that specific exercise happens every day at some customer center somewhere in the world, because a salesperson is trying to respond to an RFP or a request for a quote or a test, right? So the typical way it happens is printing company ABC, sitting somewhere in the Netherlands, says to the 8 guys who have shown up, who say they have the best inkjet press for this customer. They say, well, prove it to me. Here are 3 of my files. You go print them, and away you go. And we'll judge them when they come back. And the problem with that exercise is that very rarely does the company doing the testing actually think, oh, maybe we should be providing a hard target that we're trying to hit. So everybody's trying to hit something totally different. They don't provide profiles.
Yeah.
So everybody's putting whatever they think the profile that's going to make them look best, and they probably have a paper that they have to hit. So they're probably pretty close on that. But every profile in combination with a given press, a given DFE, and a given substrate, at any given time, the profile is going to make the difference between whether you hit a hard target or not, and nobody provides a hard target. So it would have been really fun to do. I would have loved it, but I don't think that the hardware vendors would have been as excited.
Jean, you work as a consultant in the inkjet industry. How important is print samples in your work?
Well, I've got to tell you, one thing I learned from Pat many moons ago when I first moved to Belgium was Pat always spoke about having a toolbox of samples. And, I'm shocked at how many companies I go to and train salespeople, and they've had inkjet for some time, but they don't have a toolbox of samples. What do they go and talk about? And I'm not just talking about, yes, the quality, obviously, as we've said, is key. And that toolbox has got to be, that's your Bible. I mean, that's your sales pitch. But, the different applications of things you can do. So these salespeople go out and, okay, we got an inkjet press, and believe it or not, it still happens. And it's like, you have to have that. You have to, it's key. So I learned that many moons ago from Pat, and it stuck with me ever since. And it amazes me how it's not happening out there.
I can remember, Jean, you and I sitting at IPEX, so that'll tell you how long ago that was, sitting doing something on a stage somewhere, and we were talking about the sales process, right? If you're a print service provider, what should you be doing to try and sell the things that you can create? And after that presentation, it's like it was yesterday. I have this series of conversations with printers who went, you mean I'm supposed to be showing people things that I can print? Yeah, that might be a good idea. And it's the sort of what I think of as old style sales. You've got a relationship, you're an order taker, you're not really pitching anything new. It's just the same thing over and over. And over the last 15 years, print has changed how it sells. And Morten, you know this from your experience. How you sell print is so different than how you sold it 15 years ago, because there are technology difference, substrate differences, and just even finishing variations. So if you don't have that toolbox, how do you sell the things that have the highest value?
And Pat, you know from some of the articles I've written over the years that one of the concerns I have about this industry is that it seems in a global perspective, it seems that this industry being focused so much on price rather than output and value. And when you talk about print samples as not being really part of the delivery on even trade shows, it actually also goes to the printing companies, because a lot of PSPs don't even use print in their own marketing. And if we want this industry to grow, we have to show them some of the capabilities, not just from a visual perspective, but also from what it does to the communication. We just had a wonderful session with Dave Baldaro from Xempire just 2 hours ago. And when you see that what you can do on a personalization level and that kind of level, if you combine it with the great substrates that Monty spoke about in their session just a few hours ago, and you combine it with workflow that the great people from Solumart talked about just a moment ago, and then we don't even have a print sample to show off with. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with people?
It is really sad. And one of the things, printing people, it's like cobbler's kids not having shoes. Printing companies, they're always willing to show you the really cool things that they've done for their customers. And when you ask them about their own marketing material, they go, "Oh, we got a brochure.
We have a
web page.
Yeah,
we have a web page.
An email newsletter, right?
Maybe they have an email newsletter, and
if you're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, and a lot of the web pages do not do them favors. There are an awful lot of really poorly built web pages that don't even give an idea of what the company can actually produce. I have a colleague that I used to work with, and the thing that used to drive her bananas was going to a printing company website, and the first thing you saw was a list of all the equipment they had.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's my favorite.
Lovely.
It's still there.
Yeah, I mean, and it's lovely, but it's not the fact that you own this Mitsubishi or that you own this Baltoro or that you own this VC7000. It is, what can you do with it? And that's how printers differentiate themselves, right? Because not every printer has the same capabilities. Even if the presses are dead similar, two companies running identical equipment 6 feet apart from each other might have completely different capabilities based on their pre-press team, their finishing capabilities, the arrangements that they have for substrate. This guy might get a better deal on a different kind of substrate than this guy gets. So there are so many things that you can use to differentiate yourself, and printers don't do it.
But Pat,
no, they don't.
A question here is, we all agree that print samples are important to show off equipment and show capabilities, and also the substrates and what's possible to do in print. But I'm just wondering, because if we take the capitalism as a way to go, I would assume that if print works as great as we believe, the best way to sell more print would be to show off. So why does the vendors not support the customers better in preparing print samples and just ask them to print it and send it out so they can get more customers?
I think that I don't know of a single hardware vendor that would not help a customer who wanted to build a print sample program.
Okay.
Everybody's got, they don't have massive marketing budgets, but they have buckets that they can assign. They help run open houses. They help by providing print files in cases. They have, every one of the hardware vendors has somebody who will get on the phone with you, get on a Zoom call with you, eventually show up in your shop, that will help you build something to send out to your customers. Those all exist. The problem is it takes two to tango, right? A one-person tango doesn't work very well. So and I don't know of a salesperson who doesn't normally offer all sorts of help, but the customer has to take it. And in a lot of printing companies, let's go back before March of 2020. A lot of printing companies were reluctant because they felt that either they felt they already had the story figured out and were doing just fine. Thank you. Very often they weren't, but they felt it, and there was almost an insult to being offered help, right? Or alternatively, they felt that they just they weren't ready. We're not ready yet. We're still trying to figure things out. We're not ready yet. And I've heard all those stories. It is a rare customer that goes to the vendor and says, "Hey, could you help me build a direct mail program out to my customers?" And when they do, the vendors will jump on, with both feet and hands and just hug the heck out of them. But printers are really reluctant to ask.
But because when we started this conversation, we spoke about that some vendors are not doing the right print samples to show off the equipment.
Their own print samples.
So basically, we're in a situation where some vendors are doing a good job on this one in their own presentation of the equipment. Most of them are very agile when it comes to supporting the customers in telling that story, and some PSPs are reluctant to do the final part of the thing, and then we end up in a situation where are we doing it as good as we can at current time? Do you think? I mean, I'm not 100% on your side on this one, Pat. I don't think that. Because
I think it's all over the place. I don't think that I can think of maybe half a dozen printers that I've worked with over the years who do amazing work and do the print samples and do the marketing and they walk the talk. Whatever they're telling people they can do, they send it out as marketing material, and they do an amazing job. But I can think of 10 times more than that do amazing work for their customers, but unless you're one of their customers, you're never going to find out.
Okay, and that is a big problem because that doesn't create demand.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
and the hardware vendors are a little bit, I can, point maybe just a fingertip in their direction as well. Most of the hardware vendors want their customers to promote themselves, right? They want to lift them. Obviously, the more work that customer has, the more money they make. But it's so we talked about before March 2020. So since March 2020, staffs are shorter. An awful lot of people have been furloughed in sort of all aspects of our industry. Salespeople, marketing people, technicians, designers, pre-press people. There are an awful lot of people who've been taken out of the current mix of trying to sell print, and that's and I think it had one of the first things that will get deprecated in a program is print samples, right? Because it's the easy thing to turn off, right? That takes people to be involved in that. We won't do that for a little while. It'll be fine, and then we start 2021 and I've been pinging all the hardware vendors and talking to them, trying to get whatever the latest samples are, and I can't even get phone calls returned from some of them. There's nobody on the other end of the phone.
But Pat, isn't it also with the pandemic? I think a lot of the business development and marketeers are being cut, but at this time it's like they need it
exactly when you need them.
And it's like, all this time, we've been cut. We don't have, but everybody wants to reinvent themselves. They want ideas. They need a new concept. And I've been surprised and disappointed about how little support everybody's got from, let's call it the business development marketeers, from most vendors,
and most of those guys got furloughed. I mean, when I look across the hardware vendors, the first group that got shown the door were the business development people. And that's crazy because you would think those are exactly the people that you
I'm not going to complain because it's kept me very busy.
Exactly. I'm not complaining either.
It's sad.
And a question, because I can't help think about I don't know how it's in the US or in South Africa. I even don't know it for Europe in total, but I know from Denmark that how printing companies have changed the past 15, 20 years from being companies where they had like large departments with designers and probably some content creators as well, have changed into being more and more a kind of a factory where they produce things based on files that comes in from customers, right? And I was just thinking that maybe some of the challenges that we're talking about here, creating testimonials and collaterals and print samples, comes from the fact that a lot of printing companies have fewer or zero creative people employed these days. And that means that you can't use the spare time or the excess time of people to create own marketing. You will have to buy it from the outside, right?
There's a certain amount of truth in that. A lot of large printing companies that used to host their own in-house design teams either allowed those teams to roll out and create their own company that, you know, contract services back, or just sent them all away, shut them down. There's every variation out there. A lot of companies also took a slightly different route in that they started buying companies, like, you know, they started buying design agencies and then routed all of those people into those design agencies. The problem is, in that case, it creates it as a cost center, not as a profit center. So from a business perspective, you're exactly right. There's not that, oh, gee, we've got a little bit of spare time on the press next week. Can we create something that we can mail out to our customers? And the thing is that what I always tell customers, especially those who buy inkjet presses, who don't have experience with inkjet, is while you're learning the press, and once you start to feel like you're becoming good at the press, you should be using that time to build your marketing collateral. Yeah. That's exactly the time to be doing it. And very often you can get your vendor to give you a discount on the ink. You can maybe get a paper company to give you some discount on the paper, maybe throw their logo on the bottom of it. There are all sorts of ways to work these deals. And I've been saying this for 15 years, and the number of companies who do it is still tiny.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. It's actually scary if you think about it, because you would think it's the most obvious thing. And like you say, everybody gets mileage because there it's on this substrate. You know, that's what it is. This is what it's printed on. And it
makes all the difference in the world. And you look at the people who do it really well. I don't know. Do you know a company called Convertible Solutions? Have you ever heard of them? They're a company that actually specializes in post-coding. They do, if you've ever seen the birthday cards that have the glittery overlay on them, or, you know, colorful unicorns, they do some amazing post-coding solutions. And they put out a magazine on a regular basis that uses those convertible solution options, and they mail it out to their customers to say, hey, look, we got this cool new thing that's glittery now, or, you know, now you can do purple glitter instead of blue glitter. And every time I see them at a trade show, I walk away with like this much of print samples from them, because everything that they do shows off what they do. And they understand that that's an important piece of telling their story, because, you know, their stuff is expensive. It's not a cheap solution, but it's a really effective solution because it's a unique kind of post-coding. You know, it's something that nobody else is really offering. And it always kills me that other people don't do very similar things.
And you know, Pat, you're right, because I work with a few UK companies, and these printers there that give me samples. I got a whole case every time I go to the UK. I kind of send a box back. And I work in a lot of regions where they don't compete, so they let me have them. But what they do is they've got the most amazing finishing software, the whole solution, and they create amazing samples, and it says on there sample. But what they do is give these samples, the sample pack, to the agencies, to the brand owners, because then everybody goes, oh my gosh, you do this. Can we do that? So there's every time they spend a lot of time on their press just creating samples for agency. I mean, what more do you want?
And I think that it was more common, Jean, among the people who owned the high-end toner presses. So if you had an iGen, you had an Indigo, you had an Express, I think those companies that owned those pieces of equipment sort of got into that mode of trying new things and showing new things. And as fifth color and sixth color came on, they got into this idea that I'm going to have to show my customer. And they were used to speaking agency, if you will. Inkjet the companies that buy inkjet solutions, for some reason, even if they also own these other toner-based solutions, for some reason they don't apply all those learnings to the inkjet press, and they should.
It's
the best
funny.
kept secret. It's the best kept secret, isn't it?
It's a kind of funny because Jamie Walsh from Solimar in the UK, he's asking a very good question here, and I can relate to it because this is how many print sample portfolios live most of their lives in the boot trunk of a salesperson's car. And that is actually also a very, it is actually something that is true too. If you put a lot of effort into creating these wonderful print samples, and you sometimes end up in situations that it's not really seen as a valuable tool.
So one of the things that I always cry about, and I apologize if you hear the dog barking, that's just sort of life in Aurora at this point. Yeah. So what happens is, a lot of salespeople are remote, right? They don't work from the office. They're all over the country. They don't get back to the office much. So they grab a bunch of print samples, very often off the end of the press, stuff that might technically have been rejected. And they go, oh, I can use this, and I can use this, and I can use. They grab it, they throw it in a box, they leave it it's in the boot of the car. And they
42 degrees or 38 degrees for like weeks.
Yeah, or even better, 115. You're right. It's just it's the below zero, above zero. It's all over the place. There's no conditioning to the paper, and it stays there forever. And they pull it out when they think they have. Oh, wait, this company might like that thing that was in the bottom of the box, and they go in and they rumble and they pull it out, and it looks terrible, but yeah, it's kind of like this, right? And it's like not the best show.
Can I ask you a question?
Stopped salespeople from, I have made them put stuff back in their car.
Can I ask you a question? Because Pat, I know that you said to me many times that you are not in sales.
I am not.
Yeah. Jean, are you in sales?
No.
Okay, so let me give you an insight from a sales perspective, right? Maybe some salespeople will kill me for this, but I take my chances anyway, because you think of the print samples as an opportunity to showcase what you can do and how great it is and how that can convince a person to become a customer. I can tell you from a sales perspective, and I think I'm right, and I think I also speak on many's behalf, that for me, the print sample, I have changed my mind, but when I was a salesperson, for me, it was more an excuse to talk to the customer. It didn't really matter. I could bring in we make these plastic cards, throw it away. So should we make some business here?
I can absolutely, I've been on so many sales calls with so many different styles of salesperson, and Jean, I know you've been on those calls too, where
and I ran sales teams for years. So
yeah, you have those conversations, and I totally get it. But I think that's part of what's wrong. I think that's part of what makes it hard for somebody who acquires new technology like an inkjet press to actually get their customers to get on board with them, because the salesperson has gotten so used to that. Well, you know what we do. It's fine, right? I've told you the story before of a customer of a company that Jean and I used to work at years ago. They had a sales problem. Their salespeople simply would not sell work that came off the inkjet press. They also had offset presses, and they also had liquid toner presses. And so those people, that's what whoops, Morten, I don't know what happened.
I'm here. I just elevated my table because I've been sitting down all day.
Oh, that was the sound we heard. Okay, good.
Turn off the microphone as
really
well.
Good sound.
Okay, good. Sorry.
So we were trying to help them get their salespeople to sell, And a couple of weird things happened. I did a couple of sales calls with them. And the first thing the salesperson said to one of the big banks that we called on was, well, look, we got this new technology. That's why Pat's here. You know, she's got some stuff she can show you, but the quality's not going to be good enough for you. Thank you. Well,
Thank you.
I think
Take
I'll
it
just
away.
leave
Take
now.
it
You know,
away.
that was good. You know, and they couldn't understand. The sales manager who's sitting back in the office could not understand why contracts weren't coming in for work on the inkjet press, because the pricing was way better, and you know their turnaround times were going to be way better. No. Your salespeople are out there telling customers that they don't actually want what that press does. So that's
Pat,
one kind of common problem.
But Pat, you know as well as I do that a lot of owners of printing companies have invested in digital toner-based equipment, saying to their salespeople, well, we have to differentiate in our offerings, whether it's digital or offset, because offset is the superior quality. And then, you leave it with the customers. Actually, we have a large online printer in Denmark, part of the online printers in Germany, Lasertrick. And they started off with, I think, a DC-12 or something like that. And basically, now is the biggest printing company in Scandinavia. Yeah. And they said, well, we don't come from the printing industry, so maybe the quality is not good, but it's good enough because people start buying it, right? So there is a truth to that too, right?
Good enough. I mean, there's a term that a salesperson years ago, again, somebody who worked at that company that Gene and I used to work for, said to me that it's sellable. You know, it is it sellable? And at the point where it is sellable, it doesn't have to be the Sistine Chapel. You know, it can be sellable. It's the quality for the job. And years ago, when Kodak was first putting the first high-speed inkjets into the market, the term that was adopted was business color, and that term was adopted specifically because you couldn't get rich black, right? You just couldn't get a really deep, rich black out of it. Red was a bit of a problem. Just, it made it a little tricky to print the logo, but if you were printing, letter mail, direct mail, if you were printing transaction pieces, if you were printing manuals, if you were printing a lot of, brochure type collateral for the end of the aisle in the grocery store or the cell phone store, this was sellable color at a price point that was extremely appropriate and the ability to do short runs. So there are different, there is no requirement in our industry that every piece of print meet the exact same quality standard.
Yeah.
It is incumbent on the printing companies to show all the different things they can do. And if they're smart, set different prices for the different levels that they can produce. Hi, we can do this for you for this price. You want something a little bit more luxurious? We can do that too. Here's a sample of that. You want the Sistine Chapel? We can do that for you too.
We have.
Pat, do you agree? Oh, sorry, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, because I have questions here from people, and because
people are
just so passionate. Yeah.
Kim Regin Sustman is asking, "Hi Pat, as we are a closed forum today, I have one question or comment which I really like to have you take on. You not being the vendor salesman. Okay, so I've been in sales and label printing machines since the dinosaurs, toner digital since 1996, and later inkjet, but still have the impression that digital is for the short runs and the other processes make for the longer runs. The question is, how do you see it when a customer get his long run prints from one of the rotary presses and then short run in digital, which in my opinion do not present a comparable print?
So I think it depends on this is going to sound mean, but it depends on the precision of the printing company. There are many companies that today do exactly that every day, and the end customer is none the wiser. There are people who do this in book printing, do it in brochure printing, do it in marketing printing all the time. The trick to it is to make sure that your profiles that are attached to the job are appropriate for the device you're printing on. So one of the biggest mistakes is to take all the profile work that was done for the rotary press and then just move it over and try to use it on the inkjet press, and then be annoyed, because you will be annoyed. It will not look the same. So whether you do POD in Germany, the Fokker standard, or G7 is the one that's really popular in North America. These are protocols that teach you how to do your color matching across devices. And that is, if you can get your pre-press team or the pre-press service that you work with trained so that they use a device independent profile, and then they use the input and the output profiles as specified in something like a G7 protocol, you should be able to make it so that it is almost impossible for anyone but a professional to tell that they were printed on different devices.
I also want to add to that one that yesterday we had Tuesday we had a wonderful session with Carlos Samok from Screen, together with Steve Baker from Baker Labels in the UK. And there was a similar question, and he basically was like,
they do a good job.
There is no difference. So if you do,
well, especially on the screen, there's not, because it's the same software driving both.
Yeah. So basically, from that perspective, you I think it's down to, but what I recognize from what Kim is saying, that is a lot of pre-press people in the past, at least, didn't think that digital was so interesting, so they didn't spend much time on it, and therefore there was these big differences, right?
But you can today. I mean, I've done the G7 courses, and just because I needed to understand how people were talking about it, and the thing that you learn out of that you get codified is that so long as the press is capable of the gamut, and for the vast majority of printing, what you print on that rotary press, as long as it's a CYMK press and you're comparing it to CYMK on an inkjet, you ought to be able to get there. You ought to be able to color match. Now, where you get into some challenges is those 6 and 8 color rotary presses. There are 6 and 8 color, inkjet presses in the market. They're not the norm. So you would, it's a little bit trickier.
But that's all about education, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, there's just so much education that's still needed. And you've got an operator. We're all just
topped off right now, right? I mean, can you fit another, piece of learning into your brain cells? No. But when it comes to inkjet, organizations like the Ghent Work Group, folks like the PDF Association, they do some amazing education. You want to be looking, SIP4 has their education group that helps people understand these variations. ID Alliance, which recently rolled into Printing United Alliance, they're the owners of the G7 spec. The FOGRA, I mean, these are organizations you can look to, and I hate to tell you that you need some education, because I know the first thing that everybody does is go, oh no, I'm gonna have to learn something.
Yeah, we have a few other questions. This is from Henrik.
Yeah.
And I think it's 2 questions. So what about the internal fight between sales and production? One can do fantastic things on the offset presses, coder, metallic coatings, spot coatings, etc., but try to go back and tell production that they now shall produce this complicated jobs. And then he continues, again, offset, you are a different quality of the new UV LED presses and conventional drying presses. So basically, you cannot offer the same quality from both presses, making some customers not so satisfied with the lower quality. Henrik, I know you. I like you a lot, but you're dead wrong here. Because I mean, no, he's not. But I can't help think about it, because I mean, if you take an uncoated paper and print it in offset with a UV LED drying curing thing, it just looks stunning compared to if you have a conventional drying. The densities are higher. The everything is better.
It's but the Sistine Chapel.
Precisely, but that you can do on a for example on an Indigo, right? I mean, that should not be a big issue to do similar quality. Of course, if we talk inkjet, it might be a different story. But as we heard from Simon Cooper from SolarPress yesterday with the 250 with the Brilliant ink. He said that there might be difference, but it's not a big difference. So everything is moving in a direction because nobody wants dull colors. Nobody wants to have something that doesn't look great. And, the disadvantage of having designers today only educated in front of a screen is that they expect to get the same result as a screen.
Yeah. I know. Think about it this way. We're about 15 years into our adventure with high-speed inkjet. And, we're hundreds of years into our adventure in, rotary printing and litho. And we're, decades into toner-based printing. Couple of the big changes that you should be watching for, and SolarPress's T250, I'm very familiar with that machine and that ink, and it is very specifically designed to give you really poppy inks on a whole lot of substrates. It does. Remember, it's a combination. It's the ink, it's the drying technology, it's remoisturizing. I mean, it's all these things that you do to make it really pop. And it's stuff that we didn't used to talk about 6 or 8 years ago in inkjet because we were just delighted to get good print. But now we're starting to talk to get print. Yeah. But now we're talking about, what post coatings can I put on to, can I get that gloss? Can I get a silk? Can I get a sheen? Can I get glitter? Right? Can I get the, unicorn glitter in there? What can I do? What is it now okay to do on top of the printing that I've done? And just light years of work have been done in the last few years that open the doors to doing more and more kinds of coatings. It's not, you can't do everything you can do to a litho page. You can't do everything you can do to an Indigo or an Express page or an iGen page at this point, or a Pro C page. But what you can do, is you can stay in touch with your vendors, because especially for people like who have a 250, a T250 with the different ink it's been built to be used in commercial settings where the assumption is there's probably going to be a post coat, right? That it's just the assumption that's been made. And so their abilities are going to be different, right? Than what.
Yeah, sorry. It's just because I just read his Henrik's comment again, and I actually think that he has one point that is quite interesting, because we talk about, we have a tendency in this industry to always focus on being efficient and fast, and a faster turnaround time and variable data and all these things. And what he's referring to is also that what you can do in conventional, way easier and way cheaper, is the coatings, the metallics, the spot coatings, all these kind of things. Because, I mean, if you look at Scodix, if you look at all these wonderful machines, it's still pretty expensive compared to the analog. If you don't have very short print runs. I just have to add that to this.
Yeah, I mean, the crossover points have been changing sort of yearly as technology has changed, as substrates have changed, as ink formulations have changed. Look, we're on a magic carpet ride, right? And we're not sitting still. So anything that you know today about what's possible with inkjet and coatings and substrates and finishing of any kind, cutting, motion cutters, anything that you know about it today is probably not going to be accurate 6 months from now.
Absolutely.
I think that, and I think that's something we all have to be aware of. Okay, so what Henrik is asking, he says, how do you convince production that they shall spend a lot of energy on a fantastic one-off, which sells once? And I understand exactly what he's saying, because the problem is the sales guys can sell. They what we always think of salespeople as being able to sell ice to Eskimos, and that's maybe that's a North American thing, but no, the whole so good. Thank you. But how do you convince them? The problem is you aren't going to. That becomes a leadership issue. That is a business leadership issue. One of two things happens in a company. Production leads the business around by the nose, or the business owns the business and holds people accountable for producing what's needed to run the business. And it sounds mean to say it, but It shouldn't be a question of production dictating what they can and cannot do or will and will not do. That ought to be something that you sit around the conference table and the salespeople say, I can sell this if you will produce it. And the business management says, go do it.
I can tell you
and
that
it's a mean thing, but that's the way it should be.
And it's true.
But I can tell you, but I can tell you something that is, I don't know if that is also an expression you use in South Africa and in the US. But when I was a sales manager, I said to my people, I said to them, you have big issues, because if you're looking from a selling perspective, you can sell to the people that have a well-defined need. That's the easy part. For those who don't know that they have a need, you have to convince them there's a need first. But then the problem is in sales that if you want to sell what is already established, that easily become a commodity, and commodity is often driven by a low price. So sometimes you have to get into that equation and mindset of it. And then I said I especially remember I had two young women on my team, and I said, there's a thing that you have to understand as well. You have to sell every print job you do 2 times. And they said 2 times. Yeah. First you sell it to the customer, and then you sell it to your production afterwards. Otherwise you will not get it through.
You won't get the order. Yeah.
They can sabotage it really easily. We talk about there are a lot of stakeholders when a job is sold, right? The sales guy who wants his commission, sales guy, generically all genders accepted. The salesperson,
salesperson.
Right? As a salesperson who wants.
What about the sales LGBT? So the sales
that too. Yep. But the sales. Okay, so sales needs to sell it, and they want to sell it because that's how they make their money. The business wants the sales to sell it because that's how they make money. Sales, business management is looking at margins. How much are we going to make when we do this? And production is looking at the schedule. How long is it going to take me to get it through pre-press? How long is it going to take me to do this? What's the schedule look like for this? And you wonder why we talk about automated workflows.
Oh,
this is part
yes.
of why we talk about automated workflows, because it takes some of the power.
Why do you think we talk about automated sales?
Sure. Let's do that. I think sales still needs that personal touch.
I was just kidding, Pat. Don't worry.
You know, a funny thing came out of a survey. I was doing some work, some research work for one of my clients over the last 6 weeks, and we ran a survey across people who are buying print, and the number one reason people buy print from who they buy it from,
sure,
has nothing to do with price. Price was number 3. It was relation.
Yeah. People buy people. There's still, that hasn't changed till today. And I have to just add to this, because I'm very passionate about this, and I don't want to get shot by 300 salespeople that are going to go track me down. Okay, pretend I live in Norway.
Yeah.
But honestly, I've been with the Heidelberg side selling litho. I've been on toner. I've been on inkjet, and we keep talking. And a lot of these days we've spoken about agencies haven't heard about us. We haven't been shouting off the rooftops. I truly believe that in so many cases, this is out the traditional salesperson's comfort zone. Because when you start talking about VDP, they think it's a venereal disease program. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
You're going to go into a marketing's office or an agency, and they're going to start talking about all these fancy words that a traditional sales guy is going to go, what are they on about? Like and they're going to look like idiots. And guess what? The agency is not going to want to buy from somebody that actually doesn't know what their brand is looking for and what an agency, So to me, I go into a lot of sales training, and I promise you, within 5 minutes, I can almost identify who's going to make it and who's not.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, okay, now you've bought inkjet, go fire all your litho sales guys, because they've got the relationships. The key word you said. But identify or hire a champion, an inkjet champion that salespeople can take with them to upsell the inkjet possibilities and that, because it's the comfort zone, and it doesn't matter how much training I've gone to clients 2 days later and I said, I'm wasting your money and your time. I'm not even going to bill you because this is not going to go anywhere. And that to me is still it's in Europe, it's in Africa, it's in everywhere. It's everywhere. Yeah.
And ladies, this is the final words of this session. It was an improvisation because of the couriers and the snow and the weather situations in the US. And I think it was actually very funny and thoughtful conversation with you as usual. So Pat, I appreciate your time. Jean, it was a pleasure to be working with you today. And Jean and I, we will see each other tomorrow. Tomorrow morning we have actually at 10 a.m. Central European time, we have a live demo from Japan, from the Horizon Tech Center, and that is basically more than 200 people have already signed up for it. So let's see how many that is ready for a breakfast session from Japan. I hope there will be a lot of people there anyway. Thank you to the audience that we still have here, and I hope to see you tomorrow. And again, thank you for a wonderful day here at Learn With Us.
Pat, pleasure as always. Take care, my darling, and we'll chat soon.
I love it. Thanks. I love both of you.
Likewise. Bye.